Well, hello there. Have you ever wondered why George Washington didn't just use his initials, GW, instead of his full name? Me neither. Let's move on. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to History 310, U.S. history from prehistory to 1877, the online version at American River College. I am your host and tour guide through these centuries of American history. My name is Professor Christian Jardine, but you may call me Professor Christian Jardine. Little humor, very little. Why have I summoned you here today? I wanted to give a shout out, just offer a welcome. Welcome. Okay, that part's done. But also give you at least some introductory remarks about the class itself. So I'll start with a little bit of bio about myself, only because, not because you're interested, but because I think it's important in an online class to try to personalize things a little bit. Online courses are great, but they can be a little impersonal. So a little bio blurb about me, and if you wouldn't mind, and if you do mind, that's okay. But I would appreciate it if you'd send me whenever you get around to it, an email and giving me a little bit about yourself. Not a long autobiography. Don't have time for that, but I'm primarily interested in things like why you're taking this class, why you're in school, what your goals are, and so forth. But if you're not comfortable doing that, there's no points involved here, just voluntarily. So I'll begin with a little bit about myself. I'm from the lovely city of Stockton, California. Make all the jokes you like. I was raised the only child of a high school teacher and a hairdresser in a nice sort of middle class, comfortable neighborhood. I went to nice school, so I was blessed. My ethnic and cultural background is Italian Catholic on my father's side and German Jewish Protestant on my mother's side. But I was raised in primarily a secular, not particularly religious household. I played competitive tennis all my life and played the piano throughout my childhood seriously. And my other hobby, my big one today, yes, you guessed it, reading books, and I read them copiously. You might not be surprised by that. So, if you'd send me a little bit about yourself, we can learn a little bit about each other, and it helps to, I think, break the ice. Professionally speaking, I skipped that part, sorry. I hold, which is the most important part, I hold 2 degrees, a bachelor's and a master's from Sacramento State University. I've lived in the Sacramento area ever since. I've been teaching at the college level for 25 years. Wow. And all that time I've worked for American River College, but also for Sierra College and Woodland Community College. I'm like a stray cat that comes to the door, and if you keep feeding it, it keeps coming back. I just keep coming back, and they keep giving me more classes, so I come back again for 25 straight years at all 3 of those colleges. I teach a variety of history courses, but I primarily teach the 2 U.S. history surveys, one of which you're in now, the 2 Western civilization surveys, and the 2 in world history. So again, if you're willing, send me a little blurb about yourself. I will now quickly sort of run down some of the, and more on this later certainly, but some of the work we have to do in this class, things you really want to know about. How much work do we have to do? The class includes PowerPoint lectures, which is the primary vehicle by which I impart information and knowledge to you. That will come in every unit. There'll be discussion assignments, web-based assignments, what I call mini exams. There'll be lots of small exams instead of any large midterms or finals. We will have a 1 hour, once a week live meeting. Don't panic. It's not mandatory, and there's a recorded version of it. So if you don't want or can't make it live, watch the recorded version, and I'll give you extra credit either way. A small number of points, but they add up. So if you attend either the live meeting or the recorded meeting, all on ConferZoom, Conferzoom does keep track of who's signed in and for how long. So if your name appears on the live or recorded version, you'll get the extra credit. More on all this stuff later on. When the entire class goes live, and it may already be or may not by the time you see this, you want to get yourself acquainted quickly, familiarize yourself with Canvas. I don't mean Canvas in general. Most of you probably know how to use it better than I do, but how I use Canvas, what features of Canvas are being used in this class and how. Because you want to, before we even start, when you start doing first assignments and first reading material, first lectures, you want to already know where to go to find things. You want to already know how I've organized Canvas because all instructors use it somewhat differently. And the best place to go at the beginning and all the way through the class is the modules tab. On the left-hand side, of course, where all the menu items are, announcements and grades and people and discussions, and there's sometimes one it's called modules. And you want to think modules, modules, modules in this class. This is where you go to find virtually everything. The first module you'll find, and you want to do this right at the outset, is introductory module. And if you go straight down the list of introductory things to do, you will be off and running in figuring out how this class works. So I'm actually kind of walking you through how I use Canvas to some degree in that introductory module. There's some short videos, there's some written material that by the time you're finished with that, if you watch it all, read it all, you'll be in pretty good shape. The next module down from there is the syllabus module, and yes, it contains the syllabus. A very cleverly titled syllabus module. Get it? So the syllabus actually is on that module. Sometimes students say, "You said the syllabus was on modules. I can't find it." Well, syllabus module and everything you read on that module is the syllabus. I will include it somewhere else, probably in files later on, so you could print it out in sort of normal format. This is just a slightly different format where you have a lot of sort of headings and categories, but it's the same thing. And I would read that in full. It's long and dull and terribly boring. It's nothing if not boring. But the reason you should read it is, of course, because you want to get yourself, squared away. You don't want to be blindsided by anything later in the class you didn't know was there, you didn't know you were responsible for because you didn't read the syllabus. So as boring as it is, read the syllabus and it will serve you well. After that, there's a web-based assignments module, which you should find quickly at the outset as well, because the web-based assignments, I found people start on them late. They shouldn't, and panic and say, I can't. I started a little bit late. It's due the end of this week. I don't even know where to find it. I don't know what it is. I don't know where the websites are that are relevant. Well, go to the web-based assignment module, and everything is right there. So you should know this at the outset. You should write this down. You should find it and sort of click on all the tabs, find the relevant websites ahead of time. So when you have to go back to start the assignment, complete the assignment, you don't have to worry about where to find it. You just have to deal with the assignment itself. So what are we studying in this class? A little bit about the subject matter before we go forward. The course is a U.S. History Survey course, again, with the parameters that we already laid out, prehistory to 1877, which gives a narrative overview of some of the most salient political events, political history broadly speaking, and sort of a related and larger look at some of the social forces during the same period, social history broadly construed, political and social history kind of combined. For instance, we'll look at some of the most important political events in the various eras studied, like the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the Louisiana Purchase, another good example, Uh, but we won't just look at the events themselves. We'll look at how they impacted society and how people and groups of people responded to them. Social history will have us looking at uh, the history of certain groups of people, often underprivileged and oppressed groups like women, slaves, farmers, etc., etc. We'll look at some of the larger impersonal forces in history. Historians are keen on understanding the larger impersonal forces, and they're right to be, see that as important. So demographic patterns, economic shifts and changes, uh, mass migration, we'll see in this class, is a good example of a larger impersonal force. But we'll also be looking at the decisions of powerful and famous biographical figures and leaders in history, people like John Quincy Adams, John Winthrop, Frederick Douglass, etc., etc., and see how decisions made by individuals and governments affected large swaths of the population, but also how the population and the people and groups of people responded, and how they often had no choice but to take control of their own lives and apply agency. So all of these things kind of will combine together. Um, to study history effectively, we have to have a solid grounding in facts, events, the who, what, when, and where of history. History is an empirically based subject, so there's no way around this. So yes, you're going to have to memorize some names, dates, and places. Uh, there's just no way around it. The I don't emphasize it as much, I think, as some instructors do, but you can't go further in history without mastering the basics, and that's fundamental basics. But from there, we are going to get more complicated and more complex. So we'll sort of move to a further level of complexity by asking questions about the past, the how and the why, historical inquiry, inquiring about the past, interpreting the past, illustrating how it can be a useful tool in helping us to understand the present, even possibly the future. We'll draw conclusions about historical phenomenon, try to understand the role of both continuity and change in the eras that we study. All those things are more complicating features, but we have to know the basics before we can get into those. So we're making a strenuous effort to connect the important specific details of history with sort of the larger critical thinking and analysis that allow us to put them into this broader framework and perspective. Um, Before concluding, I kind of feel it necessary to lay out my teaching philosophy. I always do this in class, but I've started doing it in the last number of years at the outset, like right here. Uh, so what am I talking about? I see my job as teaching you history, but not teaching you what to think about history. To assist you in improving your ability to think critically about serious and important subjects, but not what to think about them. And to do that, I really have to try to be as objective as I can. I'm not perfect, but I try to be objective. And so I present the subject from various viewpoints, not just one or my own. And to do this, I have to kind of also stay away from and do, again, I'm not perfect, from making moral judgments about the past. So that's not to say that you can't make moral judgments. Judge away, if you like. But my job, as I see it, is to give you many ways to see things and let you make those conclusions and judgments yourself. I don't like the idea of alienating even one single person in the class. And so, people have different political and social views, etc. And if I take sort of sides on with one, political viewpoint, political party or something, today or in the past, it could alienate someone. But if I take the other side, it alienates someone else. So I try to stay out of those matters. So that's a crucial, I think, thing to know about my teaching before we go forward. A further word about American history, specifically as a course, a subject of study, consistent with what I've just said. I look at U.S. history as both a glass half empty and a glass half full, subject of study. That's the approach I take. What does that mean? Well, there's all too many, way too many horrific misdeeds and evils, done by Americans to other peoples and certain groups within American society, which we are going to cover thoroughly. We should. It's very important. But I also believe that with the good comes the bad comes the good. So that we should also not leave out the more laudable features of American history, achievements, both social and individual, like the to an example, the literary outpouring of the during the antebellum period that we'll get to. There was kind of a renaissance of literature and the arts. Writers like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Herman Melville, etc., and some astounding works of creativity, and brilliant writing, painting, etc. So those kind of things should be focused on as well, but also not just but individual genius and creativity, but looking sort of more generally speaking at the rise of American democracy, for instance. Democracy is a rather remarkable set of political institutions and values, and it's something that we should study critically. We should also sort of recognize how remarkable in a positive way it also is. Americans, including myself, I think we can become complacent and in some ways spoiled, not realizing how much we have. Try going to another country and living and coming back and see if you don't appreciate things about American democracy that you may have never even noticed before. Yes, there's plenty to say critical, and we will, but there's a lot to say on the upside about American history as well. So, with all of that being said, I look forward to meeting all of you, so to speak, and hope you will join me in what I consider to be a fascinating journey through a large swath of territory, a large swath of American history. Until then, I bid you adieu. Adieu.